Hey, welcome back to Twin Oaks Farm in rural Southeast Ohio, USA. It's Melissa, and I appreciate you joining us at our YouTube channel, Twin Oaks Farm Poultry. It's day 36 of raising our flock of Cornish raw cross meat chickens. So, got some things in the video we want to update you on today. Hopefully, we'll get to all of it. Want to update on our flock population, so the flock numbers and the flock's feed consumption, as well as the timetable on this flock. And going to give you a visual here to start with. If we will have the camera look at one of the feeders and show you that these feeders are all empty. So, all empty. There's 7 of them in the pen. This is now called a finish pen because our birds are in the last 2 weeks of production. So I'm going to show you their reaction to putting some feed in. So we'll let the camera just focus on the birds, and I'll grab some food and we'll show you how they react to feed. We actually have them lining up over here at the short rail because they know where the feed's coming from. So the population right now is 297 birds. We started out with 305 on August 23rd, 2023. So they're really hungry because we are actually trying to hold their feed consumption back to about 100 pounds of feed every 24 hours. And one maxim you can take to the bank about meat birds is they're either growing or they're dying. There's no in between. So basically, we also know another maxim about them is that they'll overeat if we're willing to overfeed. So we don't want to overfeed them because birds that get overfed can really have leg problems and heart problems. I'm going to get some more feed for another feeder. So if we go to the next feeder close by here, you're going to see the same reaction. That's why I've said before, we seldom let the feeders go totally empty because that's the reaction we get if we do. They'll really shove and push each other. So, like I said, flock is down to 297 birds. And want to show you these 2 over here that are separated out by themselves. We were at 298 birds on day 35. And we had 3 birds over here separated out of the flock. And that, what you saw there at the feeders is the reason that we separate some of them if they're having any kind of condition that's causing them distress. So these birds actually are having leg failure problems, and they're over here so that they don't have to compete with the big group to get to food and to get to water. So the larger one that would be on the left, as you're looking at him, is a male, and his issue is he really pretty much total leg failure. He can't get his legs up underneath him to bear his weight very well. He can, but it's a big strain for him. So he can still get to food and water, but it's a combination of like the size that he's gotten to, working with form to function, his center of gravity and his own conformation, and the buildup of converting the feed to meat in the chicken breast up in the front of the bird. He can't get his weight forward enough to get his legs underneath him to be able to stand up and bear his weight. So it's really hard for him to get around. The one on the right that you're looking at, that's a little female. She actually just has one leg that's about 100% good, and the other leg doesn't work very well at all. So when she gets up, she's limping a lot. So we'll see, since I have 2 hands, if we can get her up. So these 2, woo, she just doesn't use the one leg. So these 2 are not a disease risk, not a pathogen risk. There's no exposure risk to the rest of our flock. That's why they're just cull potentials that were separated and they weren't treated as immediate culls. And we're going to try to work with them to get them through the rest of production. They can eat, they can drink, they can get to food and water with some effort, and we actually work with them multiple times a day to get them to food and to water. So another thing we're going to show you in the meat bird pen is we're going to actually turn the overhead light off. So we're not going to point the camera at the overhead light, but you'll see it get darker in the meat bird pen, and then I'll come back and explain to you what we're doing. So as I said, it got darker in here. We're turning that light off shortly before dusk. And then we're going to go ahead and put more feed in the feeders and fill the waters totally up. What we're trying to accomplish is to use lighting conditions to work with our effort to regulate how rapidly the birds are consuming food. They're about 200 pounds ahead of our target food consumption range. We have a target food consumption range because of what I said earlier. If we're willing to overfeed meat birds, they're willing to overeat. And if they overeat, that contributes to heart distress and that contributes to leg problems. So we want to basically practice a 12 hours on, 12 hours off feed schedule, but we don't want to remove all the feeders to do it because the way you saw them flock to that feed getting filled in there, they would do that in the morning when we put the feeders back in if we take them out overnight. So we're going to have feed in them, having the lights off. As dusk settles, it's going to naturally and gradually darken, and they're going to calm down and sit down because in the dark, chickens don't see well. So in the dark, chickens are basically inactive. And once it's dark, that will stop their activity overnight. They won't be eating as much, and we'll be able to help regulate the pace of them eating because they actually have to go 9 more days. I was out here with my youngest son today and he said, "Oh, these birds are looking so good. They look finished. How much longer do they have?" And I said, "Oh my goodness, they got to go till a week from Friday. And this is only Wednesday, so 9 more days before we can take them to the processor." So that's I said I wanted to talk about the flock's timetable. Our preference for raising Cornish rock cross meat chickens is on a 42-day production cycle because we've observed that that'd be 6 weeks exactly from the day they're hatched to the day they're processed into poultry. And we've observed that in that time we can maximize the growth potential but minimize the risk of heart problems and leg problems. And that's why we aim for 6 weeks. And actually, now we're finding, just like this, here we are 36 days. So just a day over 5 weeks old, really these birds are finished. We would be satisfied with going ahead and processing them now if we had the processing date to do it, or if we were processing them ourselves and had that flexibility. So we are finding that it actually can be accomplished in 5 weeks. But if you wanted to raise them longer, you could pace it differently, you know, and watch the feed consumption range, or just keep feeding them. But as I said to start with too, that other second important maxim of raising meat birds, you know, they're either growing or they're dying. There's just no in between. So when they're growing, they're thriving. And it's almost, I'm going to say, impossible to get them to like the point of being finished and just maintain them and keep them at that same point. We can't do that. The longer we keep them, the more we feed them, the more they grow, the more they fill out. So it's okay if you want them bigger to raise them longer, but you really maximize the growth potential at 5 or 6 weeks and minimize the risk. So we're going to wrap this one up. Thanks for joining us at Twin Oaks Farm Poultry. Please join us again. We'll be back in the barn on day 37 for some more updates on this flock. God bless y'all.